This is what Dr. Bruce Stewart have to say about the Greeks in his 2011 lecture.
If you read what the Greeks said, not what we think, but if you read what the Greeks said, they said they got everything from Egypt. They got all their knowledge from Egypt. Pythagoras spent 15 years in Egypt. Now, when did we come up with the idea that the Greeks created everything from scratch? Well, believe it or not, it happened in the 18th and 19th century. And it's an unfortunate fact of life that Romanticism, which has many great things about it, also has a dark side. And in the 18th and 19th century, it was decided that it was just not appropriate for all this knowledge to come from an African country.
The influence of the Kemetu wasn't contained to Europe or Asia. It also crossed the Atlantic. Link to the video in the description. I would like to leave you with this quote from the celebrated 18th century French historian Volney, as he spoke on the identity of the ancient Egyptians. And I quote, "And to think that this race of black men, today our slave and the object of our scorn, is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech. Just imagine, finally, that it is in the midst of people who call themselves the greatest friends of liberty and humanity that one has approved the most barbarous slavery and questioned whether black men have the same kind of intelligence as whites." End quote.
Are Egyptians Africans?
Egyptians are black because the real Egyptians, they are real Africans. So those people in Lower Egypt, you see in Cairo, Alexandria, and the Falahins area, they were mixed between the Turkish, Mamluks, French, English, Romans. So those people who come to attack Egypt in that time, they couldn't come to Upper Egypt, to the south, which we still have the same color, our dark color or black color. So they couldn't mix with us.
Next question. Okay, what question?
أصليين اللي هم السمر. إنما البيض اللي كلهم you see, I explained to him about the Nubians and the Egyptians. They were not white. They are black Africans. So he say now, ليه هنا الناس لسه سمر في الصعيد وفي بحري بيض.
بحري دولة مش أساس مصر.
He said the people in Lower Egypt, most of them, they are not Egyptians. They are Greeks, Francois.
Distance from the forehead to the back of the skull is long in relation to the overall height of the cranium, and that's something that you see quite frequently in certain populations, one of which is ancient Egyptians. Another would be black African groups in certain populations, one of which is ancient Egyptians. Another would be black African groups.
Ancient Egyptians, black African groups.
In a study of 2,861 Egyptian skulls spanning the pre-dynastic and all dynasties, well over 95% of Egyptian skulls were classified as dolichocephalic, Strong dolichocephaly is typical of southern Nilotic African populations, such as the Kalenjin and Maasai, whose cephalic index of 73% is virtually identical to that of the ancient Egyptians. Yet this index is so far from the norms of Eurasian brachycephalic skulls that they would be considered a deformity within such populations.
This one, we are going to watch a short clip that will confirm what we as Africans have known for ages. Now let's watch the video.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro: Shemai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shemai had Nubian features, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shemai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elite were Mediterranean type, and in this sense, Shemai is representing the society of the frontier, in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shemai was Egyptian.
The archaeologist in the video is Alejandro Jimenez Serrano. He and his team found a tomb on the western bank of the Nile, opposite Aswan. And as you might have heard, the mummy was called Shemaiah. So who was Shemaiah? Not much is known about him, but the little that we know is that he was an ancient Egyptian official who later became a vizier towards the end of the 8th dynasty during the first intermediate period. And his time in office is somehow interpreted as a sign of extreme weakness of the central power. And as you might know, ancient Egypt was in decline during the 2 intermediate periods in its history. And Mr. Jimenez Serrano just discovered that as far back as the 8th dynasty, the ruling class had Nubian features. And he finds this unexpected. That's really telling, don't you think? Before we continue, kindly leave a like and subscribe to this channel, where we talk about African history and everything concerning Africa. Thank you. This discovery is obviously significant, and some of you might try to debunk this by saying that Africa never had a civilization and that we should stop our obsession with Egypt. But all you have to do is listen to Mr. Jimenez Serrano and the evidence he is pointing out. He is clearly an expert that is telling you the obvious truth, and even he himself was disappointed in his findings. As a point of clarification, Africans are not obsessed with ancient Egypt. We just want the rest of the world to acknowledge Africa's history and give credit where credit is due. There are hundreds of African kingdoms to be explored, and ancient Egypt is just one of Africa's great past. It's not a conspiracy, but they will rather credit our achievement to aliens or label it unknown rather than give the black man its due. And when we try to dig up Africa's history, they call us Afrocentrics. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.